Welcome back. I hope everybody had a great afternoon. I'm sure you've noticed by now the cherry red apple Tesla up next to the stage. No, we won't be giving it away this year. Need to get a little bigger, but really exciting. I mean, Tesla's a great company, great customer. You know, it's in my mind just software that happens to have a car around it. That's Internet of Things. And we have a great session for you this afternoon. We'll be honoring a few select customers after we have our panel with our AppDynamics Transformation Awards. But first we have a great panel, like I said, discussing the digitizing the physical world through an Internet of Things panel discussion. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Prathap, Dendi. He's a General Manager for Emerging Technologies at AppDynamics, and our panelists to the stage. Come on up, guys.
Hello, everyone. So just as a build-up to the IoT panel, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was a AppDynamics branded location sensor in your bags. Show of hands, how many of you activated it? Quite a few. So in a few minutes, we're going to bring up a slide up there. It shows where you were last night. So, right? So we're going to show it, but it'll stay here. It won't go anywhere. It stays in Vegas. So let's get this started. I'm thrilled. I'm an electronics engineer. The company I have here is exciting. I have a lot of questions. So guys, if you can keep your answers quite quick, yes, no, not my department, that'll be great.
Sure.
Great. So let's start with introductions. Let's start with you, Ron.
My name is Ron Honeyman. I work for Garmin. I support our Garmin Connect website. It's the website that manages, or that all of our fitness and wellness devices upload to. I've been with Garmin for, I guess, about 6 years. From an IoT standpoint, everyone, when they think about Garmin, they think about our newbies that sit in the car, tell you where to go. We also have devices that are, in airplanes, on boats, and then, we've had fitness and running and biking devices that people wear or use on their bikes. The website that I manage, like I said, all the data that those devices capture is uploaded to our website. We just, I think 2 weeks ago, we crossed 10 billion miles of activities uploaded to our site, so it was a huge accomplishment for us. That's in about 8 years of data, so that we were able to capture that. But then last year we got into the wellness activity tracking market, and that's really where the IoT aspect of things has really exploded. It's a device, it's connected all the time, it's sending the data up to the site. With our fitness and wellness devices, people were expecting, it was part of their habit. They would take it, they would plug the device in, they go to the website, they see the data. Awesome. It was a manual interaction that they had to do it. Well, now with the activity trackers that are always connected, they pull up their phone, they look at it, they expect the data to be there. They expect to be able to look at their watch, look at the phone, the data has to match. So there's a whole connectivity aspect of, being connected and getting all that data up real time.
Satya.
Hey, my name is Satya Komala. I'm a principal architect at Tesla, responsible for architecture, application performance, scalability. IoT and Tesla, it's quite natural to Tesla. IoT is very, very natural for us. Our vehicle is a connected device which sends all the information from the vehicle back to our mothership, and we use the data to in all forms, right from engineering, reliability, service, improving our user experience, customer experience. So it's basically technology on wheels, a connected device on wheels. That's what we make. And my interest for IoT rises from analytics. I'm more of a data person, and it's amazing that the kind of analytics that you can run today, and IoT being the enabler for that. IoT is creating these millions of data points that we can gather now from various walks of life, and then analyze them, do predictive analytics, do a lot of stuff to be a smarter planet, a smarter car, a smarter roadway, smarter cities, smart planet. So that is my interest for IoT.
And I'm Gilbert Chan. I'm from SmartThings. For those who don't know us, we were originally a Kickstarter campaign back in 2012 that was very successful to the point where Just middle of last year, we were acquired by Samsung and became their IoT platform for all their connected things. So I think at CES last year, they said that they're going to be, by 2017, a majority of their connected devices will be connected to SmartThings and automated through SmartThings. And by 2020, 100% of their devices will be connected devices through SmartThings. We built a IoT platform for device manufacturers and developers to create off our platform to standardize it so that you have one consistent environment to build off of. So it doesn't matter who builds your switch, who builds your lights, they all just seamlessly work. And it's been a fun ride.
And I'm Bob Callaway, run solution architecture for our Internet of Things business at Red Hat. And I know you guys saw the video here a little while, so hopefully most of you have heard of Red Hat before. Most people think of us as a Linux company, but we actually have a pretty rich portfolio of infrastructure solutions, operating systems, virtualization, software-defined storage, as well as middleware capabilities. So think app servers to business process modeling and management, business rules. And then also we have quite a bit to offer in the cloud market, so things like OpenStack, OpenShift, and cloud management. And our view on the Internet of Things platform as a whole really comes back to looking at the challenges and the use cases that we see from our customers. And oftentimes there's issues around connectivity and how do I scale into the back-end data center? How do I manage all of that data through? And so you start to see problems that really span the entire Red Hat portfolio. So we've had several huge successes out of the market, things like positive train control systems, smart cities, smarter energy grids, things like that, where we can integrate infrastructure level capability, middleware capability, and tie that all together in a cloud framework, which has been pretty good for us.
That's great. Thanks, guys. So let's talk a little bit about the hype around IoT, right? We've heard so many big numbers and massive data volumes. It's been going on for a while. For the audience here, we're all techies here, so it's definitely not a hype. Star Wars is not a hype for us. We're just disappointed it has not happened yet. So that's not a problem here. But we have seen some really large-scale implementations. Just yesterday and today we were looking at brands like Disney, how they're incorporating sensors into the Magic Bands, customers like FedEx and so on. So these are real enterprises that are using smart connected devices today. In your opinion, coming from your background, what changed in the last 5 years, let's say, that's making the IoT adoption easier for large-scale deployments?
One of the big things that changed for us, and I know we're all techies and software development or ops people, but one of the big things that we noticed at Garmin was the devices evolved. Everything we always worked on with the device, we were always constrained by, well, how much data can we put on the device? How much RAM does the device have? What can it do? No one wants to wear this big device on their wrist. They want it as small as possible. Well, as the technology has evolved, as the circuits and everything inside the devices has advanced, it's allowed that to get smaller and smaller to a point where I have Wi-Fi in this device, and it talks over Bluetooth, it talks over our ANT protocol that we use to connect with other sensors. It's talking with things all the time, and it's gotten smaller and smaller, giving us that ability to really make that next step.
I think for us, the friction for innovation has changed dramatically over the last 5 years. I gave the example, like our company was founded off a Kickstarter campaign. That didn't exist 5 years ago. The people with small ideas or big ideas, small company, can really kind of move that forward without really heavy investment. Along with that, there's a lot of prototyping technologies out there, companies that are built around making fast innovations like Electric Imp or Particle. Those are easy devices that people can kind of start building off of immediately. And then we have online services like AWS that allows you to build your infrastructure really quickly. You don't have to spin up your own servers anymore. So the friction for innovation has almost completely demolished.
Yeah, not just the friction, but also the investment required. I mean, Kickstarter is a way to raise money, right? But even just paying off your credit card for Amazon allows you to just quickly innovate in a line of business if you're not in traditional IT, right? So I think a lot of people here probably have seen or heard or lived the shadow IT problem out there, right? But that has spurred the innovation for new ideas and allow that to blossom in places that in the past it's just not been possible due to the upfront, capital expenditure that would have been required.
From our standpoint, I think it's a little different for us because we started off as an IoT product. And from us, it is more of realization as to what are a few things that we can do more with this data. For instance, our autopilot, right? So whatever our car sees, one of the car sees on a road, it knows that, it learns that, and it actually shares that information with all other cars. So every single car in the fleet has that knowledge now and has that experience built into it, even though it has never traveled in that particular road. So that's certain things that are evolving out of IoT for us. It's basically we are seeing the limits and finding new areas where IoT adds value. But we started out as an IoT, so that's the Tesla journey there. That's great.
I think the other thing that has really driven the IoT market is users. I mean, there's an expectation that, hey, I have this information, why can't I see it? And they're wanting of that data.
Yep, I absolutely. I've got a 4-year-old at home. She's eating her dinners quickly now because right after that she knows she gets to talk to Alexa, from the Amazon Echo, to just simply turn on her bed light in a bed lamp, put it in a rainbow mode. So that's literally what she looks for all day. And it's natural for them. We're looking for a car now, and my 7-year-old says, this car doesn't come with Siri. It's not even a consideration for her, right? So it's kind of a native thing for them that all these things around them talk to each other. It's great. Satya, you brought up innovation and how machine to machine and IoT is such a natural thing for you guys. I'd like to take a few minutes. Tesla is famously known to be a software-driven company. Also a luxury brand, right? We see the shine over there. And also, famously from a manufacturing perspective, very vertically integrated, right? How do you guys do that? How do you kind of take the latest and greatest out there? And also, if you can share, how are you leveraging some of the IoT technologies for some of the more ambitious projects out there for you guys?
Well, ambitious projects, I think we can talk about autopilot being one of those projects, right? So specifically from autopilot standpoint, where we are in general for the overall industry, where we are, where everybody is going. So when I drive my car, more I drive that, I realize that driving that car, I'm not just making myself safe. Actually, I'm making everyone around me safer. Right? So the car never allows me to break the rules or never allows me to run into anybody. So that makes everybody around me safer. Right? So, but I think the natural progression, the future is having more, say, smarter cars out there, right? Machine-to-machine communication. That's going to be the thing of the future, where cars talk to each other. Car talks to then the car talks to the roadways. And cars will talk to the cities. So now you will have smarter cars, smarter roadways, smarter traffic management, smart cities. So I think that's the evolution of what I think autopilot will take us to. But overall, from IoT standpoint and where our product is today, we do like I said, we continue to see evolution in the kind of data that we collect, the kind of where we are going. We actually start to see more trends and more use cases as we go. So that's our current journey right now.
That's right. Thanks, Satya. Ron, a question for you. Garmin went from being a one-product company, a great one, to now a multi-product company. You've got literally millions of these devices out there. And you manage both the front end and the back end systems over there. You guys have done some acquisitions in the space. What are some of the best practices that you would like to share with the audience here around taming this complexity?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, some of the things that when we looked at it, when we got into this market, we had our device, and we were known for having great devices. And we had the website, and it was a decent website, and we had a mobile app. But what we found when we got into the wellness tracking market and really broke into this market was it's not one of those pieces. It's the platform. It's everything. It doesn't matter if you have an awesome device. If your backend services aren't running, people aren't happy. You could have an awesome backend services that are up 99.9. If the device isn't there, people aren't happy with it. The other thing that we're finding is, as people go out there with the fitness trackers and that, they want to see the data. They want to know what's going on. I can go out there and I can look at my steps. We have a device that, you can see your heart rate. All that's cool to look at. You look at it for a couple weeks and you go, okay, yeah, what does that really tell me? The next step of that, the next evolution is, challenging yourself. Okay, I go out there, I'll challenge Satya and say, okay, who can get more steps this week? Or, how do I make it compelling? Make the user want to come back to the site, look at the data, and have them to keep wearing that device and using it day in, day out, that they want to put it on. They want to have that.
That's great. Next question is for Gilbert. SmartThings. For you guys, IoT is the business model, right? It's not peripheral. It's actually the core. And you went from pioneering this home-based device market to now as many as 1,000 devices, not just your brand, but cross-brand interoperability, all this integration, which is amazing. How quickly you guys have done. So the question I have is, how did you guys go about it, right? How did you create this kind of community around the product? How did you work with all these integration, all these devices, notorious for not working with each other? How did you go about creating a platform that talks to everyone?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we did was when we first launched our platform, we thought that we couldn't scale with the growth that the market's happening. There's constantly new devices coming out there. We're not going to be the one that does all the integrations themselves. So when we launched our product, we also built in an online IDE that allows developers and manufacturers to write their own, what we call a device type. Allows them to do development, allows them to add to our ecosystem so that we're not bounded by our own resources. So we started that from the very beginning. And then the second thing that we did was we started to abstract out critical parts of our application. So it doesn't really matter what manufacturer you may have purchased a device from. A switch is a switch is a switch. It doesn't matter if it's a Philips Hue light bulb, if an Osram light bulb, a G Jasco switch, it's all a switch. It all turns on and off, and if someone wants to write an automation for it, it should all be the same. So we set out with those two in mind from the very beginning, and it has worked very well for us. And we're now working very closely with our partners to bring even better experiences that are a little bit more tailored to their brands and their specific device specificity.
That's great, thanks. Dr. Callaway, question for you. All these edge computing devices, whether it's a gateway or a small device, wearable or industrial automation, they all have a backend. They all have to hit the production systems. With such a big scale coming in across the types of devices, what does it do to production systems? And as part of Red Hat, what are you seeing as preparedness for whether it's a bandwidth concern or security or any of that? So what has changed that now can allow this range of data and device support to be practical?
Yeah, so a lot has changed. I mean, I think anything from the development model that you mentioned for SmartThings, right, an open collaborative model, you think about that holds true as well in the open source communities where we play. We think that fundamentally that interactive community-based approach is really the way to engage your end customers, your end partners, and that's how collaboration really effective will be done in the future. And Red Hat's a great example of how you drive customer success into a variety of different verticals for that. Getting to kind of the notions of the technology and how that affects the data center, I think the rise of public cloud and more of the elastic computing model has really enabled a sense of agility in the backend systems that 10, 15 years ago just frankly wasn't possible. But you apply that, even being able to spin up a server in a matter of seconds doesn't really matter if I have to code to hundreds of different devices, hundreds of different protocols, and that's really where the power of open standard, things like REST, things like CoAP, MQTT, and the other M2M protocols that are out there. Really standardization and being able to go out and leverage common libraries off the web and quickly innovate. That's the first part of the equation, and then being able to tie that back into those same backend pieces of software, that same middleware that actually understands how to know how to interpret those protocol messages and how to do that in a scalable way, in a secure way. That's really the key to being able to drive scalable IoT backends is through open standards, and high quality systems.
That's great. Since you're on the topic, let me actually ask you a follow-up. Most of us here in the audience, what we care about is, we care about application performance, uptime of the platform, quality, and visibility into it. In your view, how is it going to impact us in general, right? Either our businesses ourselves will have devices, or we're interacting with edge computing out there. What is the impact of those class of devices to what we care the most about, uptime and quality?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got the consumer experience to think about in terms of going to the Garmin website and being able to get access to their data. You've got other situations in IoT, like I mentioned, the positive train control system. If the system managing the train speed goes offline because they can't talk to the mothership to figure out whether the train should stop or not, that's kind of a problem, right? So you think about connectivity fundamentally is a major issue now, where it may have, in models of the past, just been assumed that I'm going to have a good connection to the internet, so, or I have a solid network that operates on 6, 7, 9, so no big deal, I won't design for failure. So IoT, those types of use cases really challenge some of those previous assumptions that haven't been there in the past. And that's where, we think fundamentally, there is a natural affinity towards a 3-tier architecture in IoT, where you've got the individual devices themselves that are, the sensors that are collecting the data. You could send that directly back to a back-end data center, either a private cloud or a public cloud, but that's going to generate a ton of bandwidth. You've got latency constraints to how reactive is the car to the instruction that it's getting. Like, you have to have a tighter feedback loop, and that's where that third tier of a gateway or a controller often makes sense for reasons of performance, scalability. You think about all of that data that's going to be sent back that you can use in a variety of different use cases, things that you haven't even thought of yet. You want to collect all that data, but you can't just constantly stream all of that up to the public cloud if you're running a car on the freeway or a watch, right? How do you batch that? How do you summarize that data? How do you cleanse that data? A gateway allows you to have a platform that you can do some of those operations, not hardcore analytics, but enough processing at the edge to where you can make it more scalable and more efficient architecture.
That's great. Gilbert, earlier off stage, you're talking about your new team that's behind the support and maintenance of the platform, and how important it is and how good a team that is. As you went from a startup to the scale that you are at right now, what's been the learning there? Any best practices that you can share with the crowd here?
I think the learning is actually just spending up the resources and really focusing on what's important. Right now there's a huge focus on reliability, making sure that we are tracking the right things. We spent a lot more in the last few months on data analytics, not just for system performance, but consumer engagement, and really understanding where are areas that we need to spend more time and more focus on too. So we're trying to be much more data-driven. In the very beginning, we had the ability to reach out to our customers, understand what they're using it. The customer base was much smaller. Now that we're scaling, we have to kind of adapt to that and change our styles.
Nice. How about you, Satya?
Well, I think from our standpoint, specifically around as we increase the number of cars that we have, and we have the Model 3 coming out, and when that comes in, it's going to be a challenge for us from the scale standpoint. I would be lying if I would be lying if I told you if I know the answer for that. We probably don't know that yet. We are in the process of learning and figuring out how are we going to make it more efficient? How are we going to scale this terabytes and terabytes of data that we're ingesting, and in a cost-effective manner? So we're still in that journey, and we're still learning learning that for ourselves right now.
Just a quick follow-up for both of you guys. Since you're closer to the product design side, has the data that been collected over the last years, how instrumental has that been in kind of designing the next version or the next feature? Let's start with Gilbert.
Yeah, I think that's a funny thing that we've been collecting data from the launch of our platform, but it wasn't until recently that we start to take a step back and really look at the data in meaningful ways and try to draw conclusions off of it. I think that we are now using the data in much more day-to-day life than ever before, and I think it's going to be crucial for us to be successful and to be able to scale the way that we can.
Yeah, for us, I think the approach is we just collect data and we'll figure out what we're going to do with the data. And we are actually in the process of figuring out. The initial use case was for reliability engineering and for the engineers to understand the vehicle and how it's performing and trying to build that quality back into the vehicle. That feedback loop was the initial thought process. But now we do see ways for improving service for the customer, figuring out the range problem and telling the customer that based on your driving patterns, you probably got to charge at this particular time. So all of that to help with range anxieties. All of this is kind of coming in just because we have this data set already. So we're still figuring out and we're still learning new patterns from the data, and that's what I think is really helping us be more successful at what we're doing.
Yeah, and talking about the keynote yesterday around digital transformation, you would say from your business process side, right from the sale all the way to maintenance, how much of that is digital versus how much of that is physical?
100% of that is digital. Not sure if anybody saw our experience on the store. When you go to a store to buy a Tesla, the person in the store is only giving you a Tesla experience. He's not selling you a Tesla. He's just giving you an experience. If you want to buy a car, you actually pull up your cell phone or you go to one of the screens in the store and place an order through our website. Website is the only way that we sell cars. And once that is done, your car is ready and you come in for your delivery. You have to sign your paperwork. You do that in your car on the screen. So it's all digital. We really believe that digital is the way to move forward, and everything that we do is digital.
Nice. Ron?
I think some of the biggest challenges that we faced is, as we went into this market, it was the shift in the user behavior of what we had seen previously. We knew what the traffic patterns were. We knew what that would look like. We had expectations of, when was the load going to be heavy? What would our holidays look like? And then when we moved into this, it completely shifted everything because, like Dr. Callaway said, everything's done on the edge. You have to be out there on the cloud because you have constant data coming all the time, and you have to have that access. You can't have downtime. You can't have any latency because, like I said earlier, the users are expecting that data. They don't, if they pull up their app and the app's not working, they don't care. They want to see that now. They want to understand why everything's working the way it is. They want to see what's going on. So.
Yeah, that's great. Let's shift gears a little bit, go to the analytics side of it. And I know from your background, a lot of you guys, all of you, had worked not just for a device company before, but healthcare systems, IT, and all kinds. So, in terms of process analytics right now, how important is the role of analytics around machine-collected data compared to what we know as website traffic data or some of the other prior systems, information systems? How is it different, and how are you guys going about cracking that analytics solution for us?
I think, like Satya said, we're not using it enough.
Okay.
But we are using it at times. We've done a lot of analytics to see, okay, where are we seeing patterns that, hey, wait, we have a bug in the software here. We have a bug out there in the hardware, so let's figure out how we can solve it. Some of the challenges that come with that is they'll come back to the server team and say, well, we have this bug, and it's in all these devices out there. It's going to take us a while. Can you guys make a change on the server side to handle that for us? But so the analytics of that and trying to determine that up front is very important to us. The next step of that we want to get to is analyzing, your data, looking at, being able for you to go out there and look and say, okay, how am I sleeping? You know, if I don't get all my steps in, do I sleep worse? Do I sleep better? You know, what are some of my patterns? You know, those are some of the things that, you know, are going to evolve that we need to continue to look at the data.
That's great. I got a lot of steps last night, but no sleep. Satya?
So I strongly believe that analytics is one big reason which is driving IoT today. I think the explosion of IoT is happening just because we are able to, just because of the lens at which we are doing great analytics that we are running behind the scenes, right? So those are actually generating the use cases for more and more devices to collect more and more data, and it's absolutely important to bring your analytics suite up to date in order to analyze data and get trends out of it, right? I mean, uh, lots of examples which are life-changing examples. There recently read about one article where in Japan, I think Fujitsu is in the room, but Fujitsu engineers have done a great job by putting pedometers on cows. They are able to improve the productivity of a farm, and it's a smart farm now. So they're able to predict what happens with the cows, their health patterns, and scientists are actually baffled by the kind of data that you can collect. And it's a combination of IoT and analytics which made it happen, right? So, and again, I think it's analytics is going to evolve as well. Today we have about 10 zettabytes of data that digital data that comes in. 2020, it's predicted to be 50 zettabytes, like 50 million terabytes of data. And 80 plus % of that is expected to come from connected devices, which means there might be a day in future where before answering a question, we actually look at our personal assistant, which tells maybe this is the right way for you to answer the question based on your past history. You didn't do well when you told your wife that this is not the right thing to do. Right? So I see that future coming in. That's again combination of if I were to build that, it would be a combination of my vital statistics data, the data from my speech patterns, and the reaction after the speech, right? So putting all of the data together, I can actually build that system, and I'll be a better person doing that way. So that's the power of IoT and data analytics coming together, which will make it happen.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and at SmartThings, I think it's very similar to how you guys think at Tesla too. Like my house, my house generates about 2 million events a day across about 100 devices, 100 connected devices. So there's a lot of things that are being collected about how I use my house, when I turn on lights, how I move around the house, when I turn on different things and habits. And I think right now we're still somewhat in the programmable world where, or at least in the IoT in the home, it's very programmable. You tell it when to do certain things. We will get to a place where, similarly how you have moved to autonomous cars from manual driving, is that the car is going to start to react to how you do things and start to anticipate your lifestyle, and maybe perhaps you come home to a warm meal one day. I mean, I think we're still quite a whiles away. All the technology, I think, is already there, but it hasn't been brought together in a single cohesive story just yet.
Yeah, and I think the timescales as well, moving to the nature of agile computing, you went from thinking about analytics as more of that batch post-processing. You know, what's the information that I could use the next go around to help better design my product or better affect a patient outcome? You know, it's always after the fact. Whereas IoT, you have that sensor data in real time, and it's brought forth a whole new slew of streaming analytics platforms that are really, you know, so things like, you know, Storm and Spark, you know, really complementary to, you know, the more popular Hadoops of the world, right? So we see kind of that merger of batch versus stream really being, you know, at the forefront of our customer use cases when they get brought forth and say, well, certain things, the time cycles are slower, so, you know, something like a Hadoop makes a ton of sense, but other things that are in the critical path where, you know, I want to be predictive about, do I turn the light on in the next room based on the movements that I see, right? Because if that can deliver a better customer experience, hey, that's something worth doing and worth investing in. So that mixture of analytics capability we see across, you know, many different verticals, whether it's healthcare and patient outcomes to smarter cities, smarter homes, things like that.
Quick snapshot question for you guys. We'll start with Gilbert. As the data grows, there's a lot of usage of public cloud, let's say. Just around the room, Do you guys use public cloud for some of the storage? If yes, why? If not, why not?
Yes, definitely. We definitely use a public cloud mainly because we started as a very young company and there was no way that we knew or how to anticipate all the servers that we may need to spin up. It also allows us to roll out globally in manners that we couldn't do before or couldn't do otherwise without having a dedicated on-site team. So definitely it has allowed us to grow in many different ways.
Satya, public cloud, yes, no?
No, because automotive industry is tightly regulated, and it's for us innovation should not slow down for any of those reasons. So instead of going through figuring out that problem, we said it's all going to be in-house.
And I thought I was going to be the only one that said no. We use our own internal cloud as well. It's not an external cloud. Just based on how Garmin grew up doing things internally, it was one of the things that we're starting to look at more and more now. As does the public cloud make sense? As we were talking about getting things closer to the edge, it's something we need to continue to look at.
Okay, that's great. We've got quite a few developers in the crowd here. I have a question about the whole maker movement. I think Gilbert, you talked about earlier. There is a Gartner prediction about by 2017, which is literally now, 50% of IoT solutions will be produced by startups that are less than 3 years old, right? And a lot of that is because of the maker movement that you're talking about. A group of designers and developers, hardware and software, they get together, can create small batch of devices, whether it's using 3D printing or even local fabs. So the question is, as part of your business model, how are you guys opening up your platforms to these third-party developers or developer community or even open source community where it's relevant, especially Dr. Callaway? How are you guys doing it? Have you started it? What's been some early learning working with third parties? Why don't we start with you and then we come this way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's this kind of notion of being at the bleeding edge that's fundamental to Red Hat's model, right? I mean, we have those of you who are familiar with Linux distributions, so Red Hat's core product comes from the Fedora distribution of Linux, and that's really you can think of it as the wild, wild west of many, many different projects. There's a variety of different communities and insight, and we do a lot of outreach from our Fedora program into those maker communities that you mentioned around what does it mean for a Linux system to manage a 3D printer? How do you do 3D CAD and those designs and so figuring out how do we enable those cycles of innovation, and then when it becomes more mainstream and enterprises starts to care and see that as a fundamental way that they want to do business, then the expectations shift quite a bit from a great wild, wild west, but now I need it supportable and consistent and reliable, and that's really what Red Hat fundamentally does. So we've been very active in the maker communities, specifically with Fedora, to try to make sure that we're allowing that innovation to occur. And you think about it, it's not just the physical part of it, it's also the software, right? Every single one of the devices, whether it's a car or a smartwatch, I venture to guess that there's going to be some open source software that's a part of every single thing that those three companies generate. So at Red Hat, we fundamentally think that being the stewards of that overall movement and being proven as the first $2 billion company in open source, we've got a good track record of nurturing that and seeing that all the way through to back into the enterprise. So I think that the Gartner estimate of seeing that revenue number is probably quite realistic.
I see.
Yeah, for us, it's always been very core to us. The maker community, or the community as a general, the developer community has always been a very core part of our platform, to the point where we actually even have a director level position just tailored around community. So we have our online IDE that allows developers to create off our platform without any engagement by us at all. So they can spend maybe a week on developing integration, submit it to us online. We will approve it to make sure that there's no malware or threats to the end user, and we will publish it. But on top of that, we have a very thriving community forum that allows developers to share ideas, to share projects, to even share code. So we have GitHub integrations where developers can work on a single project together on things, and we've seen some really crazy things out there that we wish that we did ourselves, or we wish we can take a little bit of that kind of credit. But our community has been a very great thing to us, and on top of that, we have open protocols. So we support a variety of protocols, Zigbee, Z-Wave, LAN connected and IP connected devices, and now we have also Bluetooth. So we try to become standardized across the board. We try to fit a lot of the different standards so that developers, whether or not they're creating a particular device, they can feel like it will be able to connect to SmartThings.
Well, from our standpoint, I think we are in a very different position than others here. We, in our product lifecycle, we are at a point we're still trying to use the data that we're collecting to improve the product and to go back into the engineering and or help improve the customer experience, service experience and stuff like that. So we are not there yet where we can think about third party exposing our data out to there are a lot of use cases, but we're not even thinking at that point in that direction right now.
How about open source?
Well, open source, we do a lot of stuff that we do is, especially on the vehicle engineering side, is open source.
It is open source, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, at this point, again, from the product standpoint, we're really not at a point where we'll have to integrate with third parties and stuff like that. So that's something that way far off for us.
What you run?
At Garmin, we've typically been a very closed environment, but a couple of years ago, we announced our Connect IQ platform. So a lot of our watches going forward, we've started getting into it with our edge devices. We've given developers this Connect IQ API for them to write different apps, write watch faces, write things like that that actually run on the device. We've had people come up with some really creative ideas. You know, we have a Connect IQ website where you can download, you upload the app after you create it. We'll validate, that it's not malicious in any way, and then publish it out to the store. People can download it, rank it, all sorts of things like that. It was a huge shift for Garmin. We've gone, they've come up with some really cool ideas. We had one developer that wrote something called the beers earned. So if you go for a run, you can go out there and look at your data field and say, okay, how many beers can I have tonight at the party based on how far I ran? So, looking at the calorie computation and that. So we've given them access to all the data, all the sensors that we have access to. So it's something we're continuing to evolve going forward as more and more developers come up and ask for, different features. It's something we continue to expand on.
That's great. And you guys supply the beer, right? No? No?
Nope, not today.
So we are in Vegas, so we have to take some bets, right? So Satya, if you can choose the lucky winner of that car. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So time for some crystal ball gazing. You guys have a lot of experience in the current companies and the previous. What are some of the predictions that you can make today on Internet of Things? Where is the technology headed? Perhaps share some scenarios, not necessarily for your brands, but on your personal ones too. Where are we headed in the next 5-10 years?
I really think we're headed somewhere where you'll see everything. We're 3 different companies up here, 4 different companies, but we're all going to be interacting together. So, the watch, the car is going to be feeding information to my watch as I'm getting somewhere. I can do something on my watch. It'll be able to communicate with the car. The car will know that I'm driving home, so turn the heat on at home or something like that. We're going to see more and more of all that interconnectivity of all that data, of the information that we know individually in our companies, in our platforms, that really expanding and seeing how we can communicate that and exchange that across each other.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think there will be evolution of this common platform to have all the devices talk to each other, kind of share this knowledge. And then I think future virtual assistant would be able to do really everything, right, from responding to your text, emails, down to sitting, warming up your car seat when you're walking towards the car, right down to dialing for your meeting ahead of your time, and then driving you in the right route to get to the right place, and the whole smarter life. I think that's where we are headed.
It's funny how you mentioned those scenarios. It reminds me of the movie Her. Yeah, I think that actually is going to become somewhat the distant future, where everything is going to be connected, and it may be to a point where you don't really have a choice of whether or not you're going to choose a connected version of a particular model. That things already come as a pre-connected, and to the manufacturer, they may promote the connected product more because they get more insights out of it. On top of that, I think that there's the whole learning mechanism. There's going to be all these connected devices. They're not good enough if they just connect, but they have to be able to learn your habits. No one's going to want to go in there and program all these things to do certain things. They just kind of has to pick up your habits and really learn and really make your life a whole lot better.
Yeah, I think in the industry we've seen several instances of just fundamentally disruptive activity. So think of Uber, what it did for the transportation industry, or what Airbnb did for the for the hotel industry. I see why was that successful? It was tapping an unreached market of consumers and providers and connecting them together, and the internet really facilitated that. I think for IoT, there's a ton of inefficiencies with our existing processes that are out there today, and we can't really identify them and figure out how to make them more efficient if we don't have the data, if we don't have the analytics there. So I think what's most exciting for me, thinking 5-10 years out, is all the inefficiencies that we see in the healthcare industry, in the furthermore in the transportation industry, retail. It's going to be really exciting to see how new disruptive ideas come in that can take advantage of that data using platforms, whether it's SmartThings or others, to fundamentally disrupt markets that I think we take for granted today. So I would say I'd probably think to see more Ubers and Airbnbs, but IoT driven in the next few years.
I would tend to agree with that. I think we're starting to see services start to bleed into end devices so that they start to kind of converge the two worlds that usually didn't play together. Imagine if you were to have your UPS driver actually leave the mail within your door, and he had the access code for a very short minute of time, and you can see him come to the door. There's these two different things. It's going to be amazing.
That's great.
Yeah, part of what Dr. Callaway was talking about, the cleaner analytics, I think is a key there. Driving inefficiencies out because we are able to generate better and better analytics, better machine learning. I think Jarvis will be a true thing near future.
Yeah, I like that vision. If finally my web conferencing technology can work, I would love it. I think
Good luck. I think you're hoping, man.
A lot of our politicians will like that the virtual assistant can send the emails, so they won't get into email problems. That's great. Ron, you were saying something? No, good. Guys, that's all I have. Great. I've got a couple more things coming. I'll invite Joe back onto the table.